All right, finance friends, hello and welcome to the first of a series of, I guess we'll call them the pre-recorded content lectures for our Econ 3660 class. Typically, what we're going to do is do pre-recorded lectures that are based on content. This will take into account stuff from our textbook, from other sources, my personal knowledge and experience, all those different things. And then the time that we have together in class will be really used to cover the highlights, dig into some of the more crucial, critical topics, see how the different pieces and themes all align and interrelate. When the time's appropriate, do some of the finance math questions, with time value of money, things like that. I believe if we do it this way, it will give you a chance to review the concepts at a time that suits you. And then when we come together, that time will be really useful as you put together your different assignments, your book reviews, and ultimately your financial plan. So with no further ado, let's jump in. This is topic one, and this is just going to be a broad introduction, an overview of personal financial planning. So we'll start off with the definition. What is personal finance and what is personal financial planning? And I would offer to you that personal finance is the study of personal and family resource use. Of personal and family resource use, and specifically of the decisions that you make that influence your financial success. Ultimately, personal finance, it's about the money and it's about the resources, but it's ultimately about the decisions that you make that will influence your future financial success. So that's personal finance. Personal finance planning is a systematic process. Okay, it's all about the process. It's all about the boring step by step over time way of approaching it. Personal financial planning is a systematic process for thinking through the specific elements of your own financial affairs and of then taking wise actions, taking those wise actions to reach your own financial goals. So financial planning is just the actual step-by-step implementation of the broader pieces of what your overall plan is. Everybody, regardless of wealth level or life cycle, needs to engage in financial planning. One of the biggest misconceptions that people have, and I really think it's a way to just condone or justify their laziness, is say, oh, I don't really need a plan. I don't have a lot of income, or I don't have a family or kids. That's really a non-starter. Everybody, regardless of wealth level or life cycle phase, and we're going to discuss this in some detail later, life cycle phase being kind of those specific parts of your life that are characterized by whether you're in education or in professional career, if you're starting out early or if you're advancing, where you are with being single versus married with kids versus kids in college. So kind of that flow of your life over time. Everybody, regardless of wealth level or their life cycle phase, needs to engage in personal financial planning. Okay? Because ultimately you want to reach your goals and you want to be successful. And your personal financial success will revolve around making good decisions. Okay, this is the key, the good decisions. Now, these decisions are really the decisions of the economist. And for those of you who are econ majors who have had 1050, this should ring a bell. Your personal financial decisions will ultimately involve opportunity costs, but compounded by the complexity that it's opportunity cost over time. Because the decisions that you make today, they may seem small to you, they may seem inconsequential, but these decisions over time will be consequential. Okay, so then once we know what those things are, we're going to start approaching personal finance through the lens of the economist. So when you're making these financial decisions, we're going to approach it through the lens of economic thinking. And that's going to start off with always considering the opportunity costs and the trade-offs of your decisions. okay? And there's a lot of opportunity costs and a lot of trade-off, because ultimately every financial decision entails a lot of sacrifice. We're talking about the trade-off between spending versus savings. You know, do you want to buy that thing, that flashy item that's being very efficiently marketed, or are you going to save that money? There's trade-offs in the world of investment between risk and return. We clearly want to accumulate and grow wealth quickly. That's how you become rich, and that's how you become financially independent. But that increased return typically comes with added risk. How do you balance that trade-off between risk and return? We think about the opportunity cost of debt. You know, if you take on debt, now some types of debt are typically seen by financial planners as okay, usually either student loan debt or mortgage debt. The idea being that either a house or your own education are assets that will grow in value. But taking those into account, but even other forms of debt, have you thought about the opportunity cost of debt? You have to service that debt. And every dollar that you have to pay out in debt interest and repayment in the future is a dollar that future you doesn't have. And that's really the ultimate trade-off or opportunity cost or sacrifice. You have to think about the trade-off between decisions that may benefit current you, but at the cost of future you. And we're going to discuss that idea of future you and of really thinking through and visualizing and really getting to know and love the future version of yourself that you want to grow to be. Okay? But again, there's a trade-off there, because any decision that you make for future you is going to mean that present you, today, you will have to go with a little bit less. And it's going to take a lot of courage and a lot of planning to make those decisions, especially in the context of things like peer pressure or the pressure, the very real pressure that the marketing industry puts on you to buy things, okay? So we're going to think like an economist in terms of opportunity cost. We're also going to think like an economist by always thinking on the margin. In personal financial planning, we're going to be thinking on the margin when we make our decisions. We're going to be weighing the costs and benefits of your actions. Okay. Another way to kind of think like an economist is to always at least bear in mind a basic premise of personal finance, that income is always good, but the best kinds of income are either tax exempt or tax sheltered. Okay, we'll discuss this in a unit on tax planning. Tax exempt income is just that. It's income that comes in without being subject to federal or state tax. Tax sheltered income is income that, whether it's by the asset type or the timeline involved, is where you can reduce your tax burden. But obviously, we know from basic economics that taxes play a very important role in economic decision making. They typically create deadweight losses. In your own personal financial life, taxes are going to be one of the biggest expenses that you face. And therefore, anything that you can do to legally minimize that tax burden by either going tax exempt or tax sheltered is going to help out future you. Okay. And finally, we're going to think like an economist by always considering the impact of interest rates and inflation on your financial plans. I mean, there's lots of ways to do your economic financial calculations, but ultimately, since you have you today and future you, there's a time aspect in there, and money compounds over time. But good economic thinking also recognizes the inflationary effects and the interest rate effects of time. You don't want to make, for example, future plans without accounting for the potential erosion of spending power over time due to inflation. Okay, so that's the broad overview of what personal financial planning is. I would offer to you, my friends, that studying this and really applying this can offer you, both current you and future you, a handful of really tangible benefits. So how will you benefit from studying personal finance? Well, there's a lot of ways. I think one of the first ways is to really start thinking about spending money wisely. At the end of it, if you were to distill down all of personal finance theory into a couple of basic premises, the biggest one is you must spend less so that you can save more and accumulate wealth. Okay, you must spend less so that you can save more and in the process grow and accumulate wealth. Okay, so ultimately your spending decisions, and they're very small. You know, a lot of people buy a handful of big things in life: homes, cars, maybe your education, grad education, but a lot of your spending are just small routine things, and there are behavioral aspects that kind of just let you forget about those. But you have to be thinking about the impact of your spending, and personal financial planning and studying this will help you spend money wisely. Note, I am not saying that you have to live a miserly existence. Okay, I'll have some thoughts on the people who say, oh, well, you know, if you just didn't drink that coffee every day, et cetera, et cetera. It's not about that. It's about spending wisely in alignment with your values. And it's about spending wisely so that future you can be the best future that you can have. Another benefit of studying this is you will start to feel confident. Confident in what you ask, well, you'll feel confident in either making your own financial decisions or in judging the advice of financial professionals. More than likely, at some point in your future, you're going to want to and need to rely on the judgment of financial pros, tax preparers, insurance agents, real estate brokers, maybe even a full-on financial planner. But having a baseline of knowledge will let you go in to that relationship with that professional feeling confident, and that's an important thing. Obviously, we want to live a good life. We want to live a good life. So I would offer you that studying good financial planning is a way to improve your standard of living. Both your standard of living now, as well as the standard of living that you will enjoy in your future. I believe that studying personal financial planning is a great way to learn how to avoid stupid mistakes. There's an old saying in financial planning that there's no right way to get to the finish line. You know, the way that you plan things out, the way that you set up your current and future financial life will ultimately be tied to you, to your values, to your goals, and also to the unique way that you process things. So there's lots of pathways. There's no right way to financial success, but there are definitely some wrong ways. And there are a handful of commonly made and really stupid mistakes that studying this material will help you avoid. Okay. Another benefit of studying personal finance, it will help you to avoid, or if not avoid, maybe we'll say be prepared for financial shocks. You know, there are a lot of things that are going to be extraneous factors, kind of out of your control, maybe some in your control, but a lot out of your control. And if you're not prepared, those can do a number on you. When we have lifetime lecture, I'll share some stats from the Federal Reserve Board with you about the number of Americans who have reported that they have less than $1,000 in their bank account. The number of working Americans who report that, for example, if they were out of work for a month, they could not pay their rent. But as we know from COVID, from lots of things in our recent financial history, shit happens. You will get hit with financial shocks. There will be job layoffs. There will be just weird things that occur. People who have studied and taken the time to really digest these concepts and to take the painful but necessary step of deferring spending to build an emergency fund, they're going to be prepared for those financial shocks. I believe that studying this will also make you more responsible. And this is a really big one. At the risk of sounding like the old guy standing on his yard and yelling at kids to not, you know, run on his yard, as you get older, you come to really appreciate, and I'm going to say this bluntly, a lot of people probably won't say it as blunt, but it's the truth. You come to really appreciate people who take responsibility for themselves, people who take care of themselves and their family. Seen a different way, as you get older, you really come to loathe, honestly, and sort of disdain those people in your life who can never just seem to get their shit together, who refuse to be financially accountable, and therefore they leech off of others, they borrow off of others. There's always some outside excuse. It's never their fault. These people, the older you get, the more toxic they become. I believe that one of the true marks of becoming a real adult is taking personal financial accountability for yourself, down the line for your family, spouses, or well, hopefully spouse and kids, and really even farther down the line, being able to take care of your parents when the time comes that they're going to need you to help them. The reality is, as we get older, move through our life phases, our parents are getting older too. And they're not always going to be as young as you remember them right now. Being responsible is being responsible as a son or daughter, as a sibling, as a parent or spouse, as a friend. And a real mark of integrity and of the respect that you will earn from people is gonna come back to your ability to handle your money well, to be, I don't want to say self-sufficient, but to be responsible and to be seen as a person who looked after the details of their life. I'm telling you, it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but I'm telling you this, the people who don't do this, the people who can just never get their shit together financially, they become annoying over time, and they become like a joke, and they're not respected, and oftentimes they lose friends because people see them as toxic and as leeches. Okay, so I want you to take responsibility. And finally, I really believe that studying personal finance will help you to live your best personal life. At the end of the day, I'm not trying to sound like a hippie to you, but we're only on this ride once, and it goes really fast. And you have the opportunity in this rich world of ours to extract out as much goodness as you can. And I want that for you. You should want that for you, to live your best possible life, to have your best personal life, to do the things that you want to do, learn the things you want to learn, take care of the people that you love. That's a great way to live. It empowers you. And I believe that you have a better chance of achieving that by taking the principles of financial planning seriously. Okay, so I believe it's a valuable exercise, and I'm glad that you're here with me. Another point I want to bring up as I kind of introduce you to your own personal financial process and journey is introducing you to your new best friend, and this is future you. You've heard me mention this before. I'm going to mention it again, and I'm going to keep mentioning it because future you really needs to be your best friend. I always separate current you from future you because it's really hard when you're in who you are right now to look ahead and say who you'll be in 20 years. And when you think of that continuum of time, it's hard. It's just hard to imagine it. It's too abstract. So I encourage you to actually consider future you as a separate person. Who are you going to be in 10 years? What version of you will be alive in 20 years or 30 years? And be really specific. Where will this person live? How will they live? What will their life look like? What will they earn? How will they dress? Where will they vacation? Who will they surround themselves with? Think of future you. Get to know and love this person because every decision that you make today will affect that person. Because the ultimate variable in personal finance is time. Time is the crucial factor. And we're going to learn, for example, when we talk about compounding, how time affects your money. And we're going to learn when we talk about investing, the impact of time on wealth accumulation. And honestly, the longer time you have on this planet, going back to that idea of the best personal life, the longer time you're here, the more joy you can extract from this. So I want you to be thinking always about time. And when you think about time, you think about future you. And you always remember that the decisions that you make starting today, not starting today hypothetically, not starting today when you have your first today after college graduation or your first today in a real, quote, real job. No, today, the financial choices that you make beginning right now will directly influence your ability to meet the goals that you set, the life that you envision for future you. Okay? So, with that said, I want to leave you with one final piece, just a quick checklist as we start immersing ourselves in personal finance, as you start kind of touching on the different areas of it and seeing how the boundaries interact, as you start looking ahead to your own financial planning. Let me share with you what I suggest will be some pretty basic steps or components. Basically, some of the things that you need to do to develop a firm financial foundation. How's that for alliteration, right? A firm financial foundation. There's a lot more to it, but allow me to give you a handful of things that you're going to need. And if you don't already have them, you need to start thinking about acquiring them to build up the firm financial foundation to allow for the best possible life for future you. Okay. Number one, you need a system. And specifically, you need a system to track your spending and to ultimately calculate your net worth. You need a system, okay? You need to open a checking account if you don't already have one. A checking account for most people is their financial hub. That's like the main liquidity account where all their money flows into and most of their money flows out of. So having the right checking account that satisfies all the needs that you have, it's ultimately a cost-benefit decision because you're balancing the convenience and the goods of a checking account against potential fees or no interest. So open a checking account. In addition, you're going to want to open a savings account. Because if you're not already saving, you need to start now. Savings is critical, and that's the thing I want to jump back to throughout the entire 15 weeks that we're together. You need to open a credit card. Now, I know it's kind of counterintuitive to hear a personal finance class telling you to take on an instrument that's based on debt, but a credit card is ultimately a critical tool in today's economy. You need credit card use to start building a credit history and a credit score. There are certain things you simply can't do without a credit card. You can't book a flight, you can't rent a car, you can't get a hotel on a business trip. So you need a credit card. I believe that credit cards, especially if you see them as a tool that you're controlling, are a great financial tool. I'll share my credit philosophy in class when the time comes for that topic. But short story is, I love using my credit card. It gives me protection on purchases. I build up loyalty points that I can cash in to fly to see family. It gives me a reconciled statement so I can track all my expenditures. It makes my financial life very easy. However, it's a tool that I use on my terms, not on the bank's terms. And that basically means that whenever you have a credit card, you have to commit every month to paying in full. If you're going to have a credit card that you can spend beyond your means and use that credit card as simply a borrowing tool, that's a bad move. And that's going to doom you to financial pitfalls forever. But if you can see a credit card as one of multiple financial tools that you can use on your terms for your benefit, then that's a great thing to think about. Number 5, you're going to want to automate. You want to automate. What are you going to want to automate? You're going to want to automate your bill pay. And number 6, you're going to want to automate your savings. Remember, we don't typically rise to the level of our greatness. We typically sink to the level of our systems. But if you build in good systems, especially systems that automate, taking care of your bills and taking care of future you by automating savings, then you can breathe a bit easier. It saves time. It's nice to know you're never going to miss a payment because you automated the pay. It's nice to know that future you is being taken care of every month because you've automated the savings. So think about automation and make moves to automate bill pay and automate savings. You're also going to need to start budgeting. Uh-oh. The dreaded B word in personal finance that people hate. I hope that you don't hate it. I hope that if you hate it, I can convince you to not hate it. But honestly, whether you hate it or not, you need to start budgeting. It doesn't have to be complicated. There's lots of ways to do them, lots of tools, lots of apps. You can do it new school with technology and apps. You can go old school by having envelopes that just say rent and food and stuff in the envelopes. But at the end of the day, a budget is a tool. It's a tool not just to help you control your spending, but it's a control mechanism to help you understand where your money goes and make smarter decisions and make improvements over time. Okay, and that's a real big theme in this class, making improvements over time. So you need to start budgeting. You need to build an emergency fund. In fact, I would say that for most people, there's a few exceptions that I'll cover later, but for most people, committing to building your emergency fund is probably more critical than starting your investment. Meaning, if you have a spare $100 left over at the end of this month, when you do your cash flow, your triage for how to spend or use or allocate that 100 should first start off by chipping away at high interest rate credit debt, high interest rate credit card debt. Once you're done with credit card debt, well, actually at the same time, then you start building that emergency fund. And only when your debt is gone, credit card debt, and when your emergency fund is built to where you want it, should you then allocate money to investing. Because the reality is, like we said earlier, shit will happen. You want to be prepared. Most personal finance books, they recommend that you have what amounts to 3 months of your own monthly expenditure in your emergency fund. So if you know that you spend $1,500 a month, you should have $4,500, that's 3 times 15, in your emergency fund. I will say that that's probably a good start. I tend to be much more risk averse, and I also understand that as, you know, professional white collar workers, which I am, which you will probably be, unemployment or financial shock can actually last longer. Given how risk averse I am, my own personal view is that I want 9 months of 9 months worth of spending in my oh shit fund. Now, there's a trade-off there, because that's keeping, to some people, excessive amounts in liquid form. And by keeping that money in liquid form, I'm sacrificing the ability to put it in a money market account and grow it in the stock market. And that's one of your decisions that you have to make. But I have done a lot of thinking about my own risk thresholds. I reflected on the multiple times that I've been laid off and asked myself how I felt as I saw my layoff window expanding and my cash cushion declining. And I have come to conclude that I operate best when I'm not afraid. And for me, knowing that I have 9 months worth of spending accessible helps me to sleep better at night. But either way, whatever timeline, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months that you decide on, you got to start building that fund. Number 9, you need to get insured. Any assets that you have that can either provide you with value or income, or that can cause damage to others, you need to insure. The obvious ones would be your car. Most of you should have car insurance if you drive, but have you considered renter's insurance? Now, I know that during COVID, you're living with mom and pop, probably, you know, doing basement, dorm room, Zoom university, but when you start renting and you have an apartment, or when you buy and have a home, you need homeowner's insurance or renter's insurance. In addition, you always want to insure what's going to be your biggest asset. And it's not your house and it's not your car, it's you. And it's your intelligence and your ability to earn a living. So considering things like long-term disability insurance and health insurance to protect you. People want to protect their car, they want to protect their stereo, and they want to protect their apartment, but your biggest asset is you. You want to get insured. be sure that you're not immune from risk, that you're prepared and that you are comfortable with risk and that you're prepared to handle situations that come up. Okay, so get insured. Number 10, you want to start saving and planning for your retirement. And maybe you're saying, but Young, I'm 20 years old, I'm not going to retire for a real long time. I know, but maybe you want to retire early. But even if you don't want to retire early, the time value of money and the growth of assets over time, again, time is the best friend of future you. So you want to start saving and planning for retirement today. You are going to eventually want to prepare an estate plan. This is one of those less than fun things in financial planning because it ultimately revolves around the distribution of your stuff when you die. And that's not a fun thought. All I will offer to you is in the game of life, death is undefeated. We all will go. You will eat, and you don't know when. You will either go prepared or you will go unprepared. An estate plan helps you to go prepared. And having done some of the administration and fiduciary stuff that I've done, I can assure you that you don't want to go unprepared. Because on top of leaving behind when you die, loved ones who will be grieving you, to also leave them a fiscal and financial mess is an ultimate act of irresponsibility. And you want to be thinking about those things. And the final thing, to wrap it all up, the 12th thing, the 12th component of that firm financial foundation, I need you to start thinking. I need you to think about your relationship with money. What does money mean to you? As you were growing up, how was money handled in your home? Who handled the money? What kind of attitudes emerged around money? Was money treated as a tool, as a status symbol, as something to be feared? This is by no stretch a psychology class, nor am I Freud, nor do I want to offer you therapy, but your relationship with money needs to be healthy for you to achieve those goals. So I want you to start thinking about relationships with money. What does it mean to you? Why does it mean that? Because those relationships will affect things, for example, like your spending. Do you see money as a way to gain status? Well, if so, you're probably going to consume a lot of stuff, and that's going to hurt your long-term future because you're not going to have a lot of net cash flow. Are you afraid of money? Well, that's also going to hurt you because you're going to be overly risk averse. So thinking about your relationship with money, getting a healthy connection with money is a really important step. And then the final thing to think about, and this will be the subject of our next lecture, I want you to start thinking about your own personal financial goals. All right? So my friends, that's our first lecture. Thanks for sticking around and tuning in. I am looking forward to a great journey ahead. Today's little discussion was an introduction, a way to set the stage. From this point forward, we'll tackle independent small things. Like I said, we'll use the pre-recorded lectures to really get those concepts down so you can refer to them over and over again. And then our time in class will be application, problem solving, and really thinking about how these components fit together and get you ready for a great financial future. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next lecture.